really keen to see offshore wind turbines on our seas. But again, this offshore wind power is not only also power generation, and I should not only mention about realizing project, but also local production is very important. I mean, offshore wind turbines, the shipbuilding in the industry and the engineering and the science should be as much as local, local. And in the near future, you know, I will mention about in my Outlook presentation later on, many world countries had a clear idea, clear vision, clear agenda for offshore wind power. And Ukraine and Turkey should take the same steps and make some real targets for the offshore wind power. And in the end of the presentation, Mr. Mark Laybourne, who is working in Washington, D.C., and World Bank currently executing one offshore wind power project in Turkey, he will join us and he will say some words about what is he doing in Turkey for offshore wind power with the Minister of Energy. He will mention about this. I again thank you very much, Andre, and your team for co-arranging this joint webinar and accepting our proposal. Thank you very much. Slava Ukraini again. Now it's yours, Andre.
Thank you very much, Murat. Dear Murat, dear participant, in the world that is actively implementing the green energy transition, wind energy is the safest and most environmentally friendly and renewable energy source. From the first days of the wind power sector, offshore wind power is considered as the next logical step of the sector development, which has huge technical, economic, and social potential. Ukraine and Turkey are those countries of the Black Sea region that have considerable natural and technical potential for offshore wind projects. In contrast to Turkey, which has already implemented concrete, practical, and technical steps towards offshore wind development, a discussion of the prospects for its offshore wind has only been initiated by our association in Ukraine. At the same time, the capacity of our Black Sea and shallow waters, our wind potential, infrastructure, and market opportunities look quite promising. Offshore wind is an integral part of the global green energy transition, and for all maritime countries, include Ukraine, it's only a matter of time. At the same time, the development of offshore wind energy for the production of green hydrogen, as expected in Ukraine, is also a guarantee of independence from important fossil fuels. Public Union Ukrainian Wind Energy Association, which I have an honor to chair, unites 100 of wind producers in Ukraine. Members of our association are 80 companies, include wind developers, manufacturers, consulting, and law companies, construction and logistic companies, in other words, entire wind supply chain. As the first step towards offshore wind and green hydrogen technology implementation in the country, we, in cooperation with our partners, have created white paper on wind development in Ukraine, which will be present to you in the Ukrainian part of the webinar. I am convinced that today's webinar, which we conduct on Global Wind Day, will become a kickoff event for future for the development of offshore wind energy in our countries. I'd like to thank the team of the Turkish Offshore Wind Energy Association for the part of this webinar and for high quality preparation. I am thankful to our partners and investment platform in renewable energy Get Market for providing information support to the event. My warmest congratulations of Global Energy Day to all of us and wish informative and successful webinar. Thank you very much, Murat. Next, you.
Okay, Andy, thank you very much for your flamboyant, brilliant talk. Now, I just briefly talk about the webinar program. First of all, we will discuss about offshore wind power potential. Mr. Bilgehan Yaşacan, Deputy Chairman of Board, Turkish Wind Energy Association, he will talk about offshore wind power potential of Turkey. And then Mr. Ahmet Paksu, who is also Deputy Chairman of Turkish Offshore Wind Energy Association, he will be speaking about local manufacturing possibilities for offshore wind turbine in Turkey, ports and maritime sector in terms of. And also Mr. Ersin Şekerci, who is board member of Turkish Wind Energy, Offshore Wind Energy Association, he was talking about floating wind turbines, a good solution for Black Sea because of depth. You know, our Black Sea is a depth issue. So he will talk about this. Now, dear Mr. Bilgehan Yaşacan, please go on. Bilgehan, are you with us? Bilgehan? I think Bilgehan has some connection problem, or?
Murat, if you want, I can start if you want.
Yes, dear Ahmet, please go on.
Yeah, just during this time.
Yeah.
Hello, guys. I'm Ahmet Paksu, Vice Chairman of Offshore Wind Association of Turkey, and also Vice Chairman of Tersan Shipyard in Turkey. Today, I'm going to talk about the offshore. What is the potential of the Turkish maritime and ports of Turkey and their potential? Can you see my screen, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. First, I will start with the local manufacturing possibilities and shipbuilding industry of Turkey. First, I will start with the ports. As you can see, all over the Turkey, there are many kinds of ports and with different capabilities. And the most developed ports are in the Marmara side, in Izmir side, and in the Iskenderun side, as you can see. Due to some restrictions of the Bosporus Passage and Çanakkale Passage, there is some limitations for the Marmara seaports because there's not any big vessels can pass from these areas. Due to that, currently we are expecting, if the offshore wind comes through, we are expecting that the most developed ports will be again in the Marmara Sea, because also Turkey is looking for offshore wind in the Marmara Sea region. Also, we are expecting there is some different strange area in the Iskenderun side. This is where heavy industry is developed in Turkey, and in coming future there is a new shipyards and new ports we are expecting to develop in this region. So we are hoping that if offshore wind develop time by time, this area will develop. Also, this area has an advantage. You heard about the East Mediterranean exploration in the offshore side. Once some gas or some stuff develop in this area, this side of Turkey will be the biggest candidate again to support offshore wind as well. And that's why I'm expecting either in the Iskenderun side or Marmara side ports will develop. And the biggest issue with the offshore wind is the draft issue. Draft is the depth of the vessel, which is under the sea. So basically, the draft needs are for offshore wind is generally 50 meters type, what we learned from Norwegian or Scandinavian friends. Marmara seaports are more like 10-12 meters due to Bosporus Passage. The maximum vessels are 8 to 10 meters vessels passing from there. So, but time by time, I'm believing that the ports will have, make some upgrades to their facilities, and we will be capable of handling this huge equipment. And now I will talk about, especially on the shipyards of Turkey. You can see there are some main areas for the shipyards in both in Black Sea, East Mediterranean, in Marmara side. Alea is more for recycle. It is not really with our, it's not really related to us. And the ports, in shipyards in the Black Sea are not as developed as the ones in Marmara side ones. And in Adana Hatay, there are some few projects, but none of them are, one or two there are shipyards. And it is still developing, and we are expecting with the offshore in the East Mediterranean develops with the gas exploration, this part will also develop in coming future. But I want to focus on especially in Istanbul and Kocaeli and Yalova side. I mean, there is some in Istanbul and Kocaeli, the facilities are a bit smaller compared to the Yalova side region, because there is in Tuzla there is a draft limitation in entrance of the port, which is 8 meters. Of course, this SOVs, PSVs, or some vessels can be built, but if you are going to build some huge constructions, this Istanbul shipyards may have problem. So the biggest candidate for such offshore structures will be either Kocaeli or Yalova shipyard region will be the biggest candidate for this such structures. And you can, we summarize some highlights of the Turkish shipyard sector. As you can see, we are both in new building and repair side. We are very focused on that, and especially on repair. Turkey has a very good name for all Mediterranean region. And starting from 2000, beginning of 2000, Turkish shipyards new building segment has been also growing day by day. And today we are building many of the chemical tankers, sailing boats, fishing vessels, I mean ferries, even sailing vessels. I mean the cruise vessels started to build in Turkey. But now, of course, today I'm going to focus on something else, which is the production, vessel productions in Turkey. You know, there are some, when we are talking about the offshore wind, there are some special vessels need to be used. I mean, of course, I write some of them: offshore construction vessels, offshore support vessels, anchor handlers, offshore wind support crew vessel, and crew vessels need to be used. Of course, some vessels that I didn't mention here is cable layers and jackups. Unfortunately, we haven't able to build those vessels in Turkey. But however, there are some talks for the cable layers. I know also there are some talks for cable layer. I'm hoping that within the next 2-3 years, Turkey will be able to build also cable layers in Turkey also. But I want to focus on these other vessels that has been built in Turkey: offshore construction vessels, offshore support vessels, anchor handler, especially offshore wind support and crew vessels. Offshore wind support crew vessels and offshore support vessels, SOVs, and these vessels are used for during the operation time of the vessel, of the wind farms, offshore wind farms. And during the operation time, this vessel bringing crew or bringing equipment to the wind farms. So these vessels are coming more important, and it is coming more popular. And there is something common with the offshore wind sector and offshore oil sector is of course these vessels. We are using more or less same vessels and more or less same technology. Nowadays, some of the vessels are converted to be used on the wind farms. However, of course, there are some new buildings as well. And I already recently, there are offshore wind support vessels and crew vessels have been built in Turkey, specifically for the offshore wind sector in last few years. And we have also built some PSVs, OSVs in the recent last years. And I want to focus on another vessel, also anchor handle tug ships, AITCs. These anchor handlers have a critical role when the floating wind comes popular. This anchor handlers has a very critical role, because once there is a floating structures, if there is a 1 gigawatt wind farm, there is a 70 of platforms needed, for example, 70, 80 of them And so it means that normally one anchor handler is handling 2, 3, or 4 floating structures in the oil segment. But when you are talking about 70 of different platforms, you need maybe 4 or 5 anchor handlers for each wind farm. And unfortunately, in the world, there is not such a so many vessels. And many of them are, you can imagine, is using so much oil. And with the coming needs of the investors, of the governments, I'm believing that there will be huge demand of this anchor handler ships also once this floating structures comes much more important. And also of course, in Turkey, we build other types of commercial vessels, bulkers, containers, tankers, LNG carriers. And the other one is the offshore. I want to talk today is the offshore structures. We have built in the offshore in previous year offshore oil rigs, offshore platforms, and floating power plants. The important, if this offshore structure is especially for the floating, when the floating comes through, it will be much more important. Offshore floating structures are much different than vessels because they need to keep in the sea 30, 40, 50 years. So you need to make the requirements according to that. I mean, the welding quality or painting quality. So also the requirements from the class societies, DMV, RINA, or Bureau Veritas, are much higher for the offshore floating structures. That's why they want to be in each step. They want to see what is going on. And importance of the class societies surveys are much important on the offshore floating structures. And Turkey has a pretty good experience on this as well due to oil story, that we have built some offshore structures both to Russia and some Arabian Gulf countries. So we are believing that once this offshore, there's a need for the offshore structures, Turkey will be again one of the biggest candidates in the region with the capacity of with the steel production capacity of Turkey. And now I would like to talk about also the other wind farm components. You know, maybe we have capable of building towers, blades, generators, and already there are some talks with the nacelle factory. And I'm hoping that within a few years we will be able to have some nacelle factories even in Turkey. And for the towers, offshore towers are pretty different than what we have in the land. But this, also the offshore foundations are a bit different. But there's not such a facility to build the foundations in Turkey. But there are some talks again, and this is not really rocket science. And I'm hoping that we will be able to have such a capacity also with the potential, even in the Turkish market. I'm hoping within a few years we will be able to do that as well. So I just a little bit summarize the potential of the Turkey in terms of production, and we are very experienced to work with North European market, and we have built many vessels to Scandinavian market, and we are and all DMV, BV, RINA have some offices in Turkey, and we have a very good track record with offshore oil platforms, and Turkey have a very wide subcontractor capacity. And I've just summarized some of the vessels here that you can see. And thank you very much for listening, Mehmet. If you have questions, we can talk at the end of the meeting. And yeah, floor is yours, I think.
Yes. Now, dear Ahmed, thank you very much for your great presentation, because you emphasize that this technology is not only power generation, but also vessels, ports are very important.
Yes,
we should consider about this. Thank you very much. We will take the questions at the end of the webinar. Now it's time for Bilgehan. Bilgehan, are you with us? I believe he's facing some connection problem. If he's not available, then I will present it. But now, Bilgehan, if Bilgehan is not there, Ersin, you should take it. Now Ersin is going to talk about floating wind turbines. Ersin, it's yours.
Okay, thanks. I will share my screen. Can you see it? Welcome everyone. First of all, thanks for participating in this webinar. Today, I want to present you emerging and game-changer technology in offshore wind sector. Name is floating offshore wind. In coming years, we most probably talk these systems more and more, since it will be more dominant technology in offshore wind sector. Today, before talking the floating offshore wind, I want to talk about the data measurement method in offshore wind sector, which is a vital topic for offshore wind. Then I'll talk about the floating offshore potential in Black Sea region, which is a mass potential in there according to World Bank documentation. We talk about the types of floating and platforms, and finally talk current and upcoming projects for floating offshore wind farms. Now in this photo, you can see two different data measurement platforms in right side. You can see the two different data measurement platforms. In the right side, you can see the floating lidar, and the left side, floating wind mast. Now we are talking about the both systems more detailed. The lidar range is higher than the float mast. Both systems are autonomous, and they have a solar panels, small wind turbine, and also a battery. If necessary, they put fuel cells as well. Because of the compact structure, lidar is more reliable than the mast one. Both are easy installation process. The installation is made in closing port and the pulled from there. These systems are more expensive than the land application as well. These systems are suitable for the bankable report, which is very important to investor side, and they comply with IAC standard. Because of the compact structure of the float lidar, it is more easier than the float mast for transportation and also service and operation. And float mast have a mast which be affected harsh environment conditions than the lidar. The Carbon Trust, it is an independent consultant company. Aim is to accelerate the delivery of the sustainable low carbon economy according to their evaluations. Floating lidar technology commercially accepted in the offshore wind industry and providing bankable wind data. Floating lidar systems are more reliable and exact data availability. But also we note that more additional measurement capabilities should add these floating systems, such as the wavelength, etc. In this photo, you can see both the technology in one shot, floating lidar and floating mast in the one shot. Most of the investors choose the both solutions nowadays. Now, you can see the map. This study has been done by the World Bank. According to this map, there is a 435 gigawatt offshore wind farm potential in Black Sea. 269 gigawatt belongs to fixed offshore wind, and 166 gigawatt belongs to floating offshore wind. In Turkey, according to the World Bank report, there is a 75 gigawatt offshore wind potential, which is the 12 gigawatt is the fixed one and 63 gigawatt is floating one. However, I want to add a note that, as you see in the maps, there is a great potential in Aegean Sea region. However, because of the conflicts of economic zone in Greece and Turkey, the real potential doesn't show the World Bank report. Hopefully, Turkey and Greece will make a solution and change the agency to offshore wind sea center as well. Now, I want to talk about why floating offshore wind turbine. First, higher winds. Compared to fixed one, the floating wind turbine will erect far away from the land, so it will have more stable and higher wind. Second, larger installation area. This is very important issues for the offshore because of the array design and calculation, and a cable optimization can be handled more effective and massive potential for deep seas for offshore wind as well. Third, easier installation and easier disassemble. Compared to fixed offshore turbine, floating has more easy installation because all installation, both platform and wind turbine, has been done in the closing port. Then the vessel pulled the whole platform in the exact position. However, in the fixed one, the installation has been done into the sea, so it is more complicated than the floating one. This is valid for the disassemble process as well. Last but not the least one is that floating is more environmentally friendly than the fixed one because for floating offshore wind farm, there is not any hammering activity such as the fixed bottom wind turbines. As a result, floating platforms will provide a minimal impact to the living life into the sea. I want to talk about important notes on the floating offshore wind farms. Fixed bottom offshore wind farm is not economically suitable, especially in the sea areas that are more than 60 meters deeper. Due to the limited sea areas with a depth of less than 60 meters, floating wind offshore will becomes widespread in the future, and R&D studies related to this have been completed, and commercially floating power plants have begun to established. And this emerging technology is an opportunity in Turkey and the Ukraine both, as 80% of the European Sea have a depth of 60 meters and above. The floating offshore wind farm installed at the end of the 2020 is only just 62 megawatt in total. So it's a huge potential because the installed offshore wind potential in the world is 1,400 gigawatts, and 70% of this belongs to the floating offshore wind power plants. Now the active countries is France for offshore floating wind turbines. The active countries is France, England, Norway, Portugal, Korea, Japan, Scotland, Spain, and Greece. Now I want to talk about the types of floating wind turbines platforms. The spar and semi-submersible platforms are completed R&D process and become commercial. In the next slide, I will show some examples about these projects. For barge and the tension link platform are on R&D process ongoing. There are many companies working in semi-submersible method platform. Today, I want to show two proven platforms. Principal Power and BW Ideal platforms. Principal Power is a startup company established in 2007. There are 5 turbines working with Principal Power platforms. 3 Vestas 8.4 megawatt turbines have been installed the coast of Portugal. This is the major milestone in the technology advancement of the offshore floating industry. And these turbines operate on a wind floating platform, a moored semi-submersible platform as well. And the next project of this platform has been installed in the United Kingdom. I will show the latest photo, this project in the next slide. And BW Ideal is another company using submersible platform. They are producing these platforms, both steel and concrete. Because of the financial issues, they use concrete as an option. And they have installed 3 wind turbines, 2 of them installed in France, and the concrete one, the cheaper one, installed in Japan under the Hibiki project. You can see the latest photo, the Kincardine United Kingdom project. These platforms are Principal Power submersible platforms. Now, 5 sets of 9.6 megawatt Vestas has been installed. Equinor used a spar method for their High Wind Scotland project. This wind farm is in operation since 2017, and according to the latest report, it reached 54 capacity factor in 2020. This is valuable for a great opportunity in the terms of the commercialization in the coming years for offshore floating one. After this experience, Equinor has started new project 88 megawatt offshore wind in Tampen to provide electricity for the Snor and Gulf Lakes offshore field operation in Norwegian, and they can provide electricity to its own gas and oil platforms. It will be installed in 2022 and containing the former project. Equinor will use a concrete spar technology to reduce the costs. You can see the latest photo of the concrete spar for Equinor Tampen project. It will be in operation 2022. And these are the project lines of the floating offshore wind farm project. I showed the latest photo, Tampen and King Guardian project. There are 4 different floating projects ongoing in France, and you can see the list in the table. And I want to give some news about the floating offshore wind. According to the latest news, South Korea plans to make a 4.6 gigawatt floating offshore wind farm and signed memorandum of understanding for these projects. Japan plans to open a floating offshore wind farm tender in a short time. And France has opened a tender for 270 megawatt floating wind farm and will be received the bids. Thanks for your patience and congratulate your Global Wind Day. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ersin. Now, 95% of this foundation monopile, but I believe that in the near future, these floating will replace them. And also, I agree your comment that this agency should be tourism or energy sea with Greece, not dispute sea. Now, Ilgan, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me and see
yes.
my presentation?
Yes. Not yet your presentation, but you please make it screen, your presentation.
I'm doing and can you see right now?
No, still no.
Maybe Kenan Bey share the presentation.
Oh, yes, okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Hi everyone, thank you very much for waiting me, and happy Global Wind Day, everyone. My name is Bilgehan Yaşacan, Deputy Chairman of the Turkish Offshore Wind Energy Association. In this presentation, I would like to talk about the offshore wind estimated technical offshore wind potential of Turkish seas and their calculation and estimation parameters and methods. Next slide, please. Okay. The total technical, the potential is 69 gigawatt in total in Turkish, the seas around our peninsula. The most attractive areas for the offshore wind lie in the northwest Aegean Sea, where the wind speed is rise to 9 meters per second, and the largest area has a technical offshore wind potential of 6 gigawatts fixed and 19 gigawatt floating. The sea, you can see the map here. The Sea of the Marmara and the Black Sea have a good wind speed of 7-8 meters per second. There are many pockets of opportunity along the western coast and to the southeast, it's alongside. In total areas with water depths less than 50 meters have a technical potential of 12 gigawatt. And to 1,000 meter depth a further 57 gigawatt, in total 69 gigawatt. This map is taken from the Global Wind Atlas. This is free, everyone can access and see their countries. You can see the wind, the potential is, the potential density is the western coast of Turkey, Aegean Sea. You can see here a little bit Marmara and the Black Sea region here. And also we have The southern part of Turkey is the Hatay region is also wind, the potential more than 8 meters per second average wind speed. The areas in the north must account for the shipping lanes between the Aegean Sea and the Black Sea, which can be facilitated by the careful planning. As all the areas coastal, the project must engage local stakeholders and manage visual impacts, especially for the effect of the tourism. Due to heavy marine traffic in Marmara and Black Sea coast, careful navigation planning will also be required. You can see that the shipping lines there's very heavy marine traffic here, and also the tourism, the perspective also should be taken into consideration. If a little bit focus on the areas suitable for the offshore wind farms, as I said before, is the western part here, and within the Marmara Sea, which is inland sea of Turkey, and also Black Sea region here. Also, we have the southern part of Turkey, some potential here, and the Hatay region in Mediterranean Sea. If we a little bit focus on the exact potential, this is western part of Turkey. Here, actually, we focused on here. You can see this area is dot lines. Dots are representing floating potential, water depth up to 1,000 meters. And these lines are representing the fixed foundations, depths up to 50 meters. And we have some here, the fixed foundations within the Marmara Sea. And the dots are the floating areas are here, and a little bit here, the lines within the Marmara Sea. There are some constraints and some limitations, and there are several main reasons to limiting the access to offshore wind farm opportunity. Turkey, only in the western part of the Aegean Sea, is 6 nautical miles of territorial waters in western the coasts, leading to competing uses and a strong interplay of environmental and the social issues. Also, exclusive economic zone, this is also another parameter, and the numerous islands in the Aegean Sea along the western coast, further fragmental jurisdictional waters, and also technical parameter transmission to demand centers. Transmission networks in the north and the west are quite strong, with 380 kV and the 154 kV lines. However, again, the reinforcement of these lines, this network, will be needed to accommodate offshore wind, especially for the project more than 1 gigawatt. Relevant policies, a little bit talk about relevant policies and the targets. Turkey increased its 2012 renewable energy target from 27% to 38.8% of power generation by 2023. The following the news that 32.5% renewable generation had been achieved in recent years. We are increasing that. There was a tender for offshore wind in 3 years ago, 2018, which received no bids, unfortunately, which is arranged in Turkey, reportedly because of the high local content requirements. Also, the very limited time to prepare for the investors to make a feasibility studies and decisions, etc. There was no time to do that at that time. The fit with the regional offshore wind market. Turkey has some synergies with European offshore wind market due to this tender, 3 years ago tender. The governmental institutions, also the investors and also EPC contractors, marine contractors contacted with the European offshore stakeholders. And they have right now some synergies with them. Unfortunately, not only the Turkey, but also the Mediterranean area offshore wind farms have been built. Unfortunately, let's a little bit talk about the methodology of the selecting these areas, data sources, geospatial data resources, and the detailed methodology. For the presented analysis, the following open source data sets have been used: annual mean speed, water depth, economic exclusive zones. Based on these thresholds, the wind speeds taken as greater than 7 meters per second, assumed as optimal resources for the offshore wind deployment. The bathymetry is up to the 50 meters, are considered suitable for the fixed foundations. Between the 50 meter and the 1000 meter water depths are considered suitable for the floating foundations, and the resulting areas more than 10 kilometers square filtered by the size, with the areas covering a minimum, which is 10 kilometers per square, considered suitable for the installation of an offshore wind farm. Geospatial analysis is comprised of 5 main operations. The first one is clipping all the layers to the economic exclusive zones. The second is the subset, the main data set per threshold values. The third is the subtract the wind speed for each water depth category. And the fourth is removing the resulting areas smaller than 10 kilometers square, and computing the technical potential for the suitable zones at the end. Based on this, if we look at the details of the potential, for the fixed foundations up to the 50 meters wind speed, if it takes between 7 and 8 meters per second, the potential is 66 gigawatt in Turkey. Again, for the fixed foundations up to the 50 meters, if we take 8 meters per second, the wind speed, the Turkish the offshore wind potential is 5.6 gigawatt. If you look at the floating potential up to the 250 meters, for the wind speed between 7 and 8 meters per second, the potential is 21.3 gigawatt. And again, up to the 250 meters, if we take the wind speed 8 meters per second, the Turkish potential offshore wind potential is 20.6 gigawatt. This is very detailed. At the end, if we look at the parameters and the details, if we separate according to the wind conditions and the water depth conditions, in total 57 gigawatt wind, the offshore wind farm potential in Turkey. There are 1 or 2 megawatt is more southern part of the Turkey. In total, around 59 gigawatt, the potential wind farm. That's all my presentation. By the way, These data are taken from the World Bank, SNAP, Expanding Offshore Wind to Emerging Markets, published in 2019. And also, I have used Global Wind Atlas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bilge, and you too. Also, thank you too. You know, I'm also a little bit suspicious about the numbers you have given because of World Bank report. Even in World Bank report, they say that Romania has 67 gigawatts capacity, but Turkey 65 gigawatts. So probably this World Bank, this disputed area, because of Greece and Turkey disputed area, they did not calculate Aegean part of Turkey. Probably because 75 is too low for Turkey. It should be much more. I believe that. Now, that's all from Turkey. Now the offshore wind goes to Ukraine. So, and the first presentation by Mrs. Katerina Knish. She will talk about offshore wind power potential of Europe, and she's also head of analytical department of Ukrainian Wind Energy Association. Давай, Katerina.
Thank you very much, Murat. Dear participants, I'm glad to see you at the second part of the webinar regarding the potential of offshore wind power in Ukraine. Ukraine is another country of the Black Sea region, also has significant both wind and technical potential for the development of offshore wind power, which potentially hinders the development of green hydrogen production. Instead, today, Ukraine is only at the beginning of its maritime path. So what we have today, I'm just a few seconds share my screen. Is it visible?
No, not yet, Katerina.
Sorry, one more time. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Okay. So.
Katerina, yes. No,
yeah. A few words about the OVA. Ukrainian Wind Energy Association is the largest renewable energy industry association in Ukraine. The Ukrainian Wind Energy Association, founded in 2008 to protect the interests and support the activities of both the national and international stakeholders of the Ukrainian wind energy market, which, as of the end of 2020, unites 80 companies, including 100% of wind electricity producers and investors, also wind farm developers, equipment manufacturers and suppliers, utilities, construction, consulting, and logistic companies, also lawyers and environmentalists involving in wind energy project. Throughout its history, the Ukrainian Wind Energy Association has been closely cooperating with various national and international authorities. For example, such international institutions like International Energy Agency, Bloomberg New Energy Finance, Wood Mackenzie, REN 21, and so on. Also, the OVA is a full member of World Wind Energy Association and the Wind Europe. So what we have today in Ukraine's wind power sector. In contrast to a record-breaking year 2019, in 2020-2021, the national wind power sector experienced a sharp reduction in growth rate. Murat, tell me, please, do you see my presentation?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Enormous depths of payments to electricity producers from wind and other renewables accumulated since the launch of the new electricity market, a sharp spike of solar generation, high green tariff for some solar wind farms, and political speculations on the green tariff and the renewables, backed on strong lobby on the conventional energy sector, and have led to some crisis in renewable energy sector. As of May 2021, the total installed capacity of the wind energy sector of Ukraine reached more than 1,400 megawatts. Today in Ukraine, green electricity is generated by 646 wind turbines, and 80.8% of which are accounted for by national production. As I said before, one of the main current challenges of Ukrainian energy system is a strong lobby of the conventional energy sector and the conventional energy sector as a whole. Today, the Ukrainian energy sector is not young. Most thermal and nuclear power plants have already reached the end of their life cycle. Thus, 90% of current thermal power plants in Ukraine have already exited their lifetime, while 60% have been in operation for more than 200,000 hours. According to the NPC Ukrenergo, its national transmission system operator, in case of successful reconstruction of these thermal power plants, it will be possible to leave by 2025 only 80% of thermal generation. Today, such a reconstruction is estimated at more than 4 billion euros. These are impressive funds, and we understand that investing such money in thermal power plants would be irrational and illogical. Nuclear energy is also expected to have a bad prediction. By the end of 2031, 10,000 megawatts of nuclear units is expected to be fully decommissioned, which means more than 1,000 megawatt per year. Moreover, according to our calculations, lifetime of 9 nuclear power units out of 15 has been already extended for 10 years, and the lifetime of another 3 nuclear units for 20 years. What do these two slides mean? I mean the slides on thermal power and nuclear power. They mean that in less than 8 years, Ukraine will gradually lose part of its generation due to obsolescence. Loss of generation, in turn, will reduce the production of electricity. And this is bad news, considering that according to the national transmission system operator, electricity consumption in Ukraine is growing exponentially by 2050. As you can see in this slide, in 2030, Ukraine should reach 125 billion kilowatt hours of electricity consumption. Another huge problem of the modern Ukraine's power sector is strong dependence on imported fossil fuels. Ukraine's foreign economic activity with the Russian Federation, in particular in terms of energy trade, is still characterized by fairly high rates. Ukraine imported coal, oil, and oil products, gas and electricity from Russia, totaling more than $2,000 billion for this. Yes, this year, in 2021, the national regulator banned the import of electricity from the Russian Federation. However, this restriction is valid only until October 2021 and doesn't apply to other types of energy sources. What is the solution? Ukraine is currently only at the beginning of the path in offshore wind energy. In order to launch this market, we need not only to prepare a significant legal and technical framework, but also to work on this issue within a society. that is not fully aware of all the benefits of offshore wind power and green hydrogen. But we have already taken the first step. And this year, the Ukrainian Wind Energy Association, together with law firm Asters, the OVA member company, and the Ukrainian Hydrogen Council and the Institute on Renewable Energy of Ukraine, published a white paper which analyzes the potential for offshore wind energy development in Ukraine and presents the legislation that needs to be prepared to launch this market. Ukraine ranks record second in Europe in terms of wind energy potential. This applies to both offshore and onshore wind farms. Thus, a recent World Bank analysis estimated the technical offshore wind potential for Ukraine in the waters of Black and Azov Seas in total of 251 gigawatt. Although it includes the territory of the occupied Crimea. But the potential for Ukraine, a member of the European Energy Community, is 2.5 times that of Bulgaria and Romania combined. This makes offshore wind farm more important for Ukraine than its coal reserves. Ukraine has significant technical potential for the development of offshore power generation in shallow areas, and you can see it at our map. Prepared by Institute of Renewable Energy of Ukraine. So the Azov and Black Seas, the Savage Bay, the reservoirs of Dniprovska hydropower plants and Austria's have 250 gigawatt of offshore wind potential. Given the real average installed capacity factor of 45% for Ukraine's offshore wind power plants, the corresponding annual electricity generation will be more than 900 kilowatt hours, which is more than 6 times the current annual electricity consumption in Ukraine. So this generation, if we use all our potential, we can provide an average annual production of 290 billion tons of green hydrogen. It's 90.5 million tons of green hydrogen from electrolyzers. As a conclusion, offshore wind power and green hydrogen serves as an effective replacement for thermal and nuclear generation. In addition, hydrogen is able to solve another problem of Ukraine, dependence on fuel imports. In addition, green hydrogen is also an excellent grid balancing technology that the Ukrainian system will need in times of large-scale transition to renewable energy sources. And of course, hydrogen, it's a great instrument for saves electricity and saves it without losses. So it's the matter of balancing. The last, what I want to say for today, the OVA conducts active analytical activities. Every year we publish a market overview which describes the current state of the market, the latest legislative initiatives and amendments, new and plans, wind projects, and much more. Moreover, this year, the children's book of Secrets of Wind, initiated by Ukrainian Wind Energy Association, was published for children from 8 to 12 years. This book is the first in series of books on renewable energy, and perhaps one of the books will be dedicated to offshore wind energy too. So that's all from the last what I want to say from my side. And I want to remind all the participants that we have a chat where you can not only write questions, but also share your ideas for the development of offshore wind energy in Ukraine and in Turkey. We are really happy to have a dialogue with you, so please write us and we will answer to your questions. And now I think we can continue to reveal the potential for the development of offshore wind energy in Ukraine. One of the main steps to launching this market is to prepare the right and balanced legislation. The issue of offshore wind legislation in the above-mentioned white paper was disclosed by the law firm Asters, a member of the Ukrainian Wind Energy Association. Asters have extensive experience in advising clients on various significant energy-related projects in Ukraine. So I want to give the floor to Marta Halabala, Senior Associate at Asters, and one of the main authors of the white paper. Marta, the floor is yours.
Katerina, thank you very much. Murat, Andrei, thank you very much for this opportunity to be a speaker at this very actual webinar on offshore. I believe that the participants of this webinar are really enjoying the information you are providing, and it's quite good that we are having that conversation between Ukraine and Turkey as the neighbors at the Black Sea, and discussing the opportunities for the investors as well. One moment, I will gladly share presentation. One moment. Do you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So my name is Marta Halabala. As Katerina kindly mentioned, I'm a senior associate at Asters law firm, the biggest law firm in Ukraine. Actually, we had some work done on the white paper for offshore wind farms in Black Sea for Ukraine. And we also, as Katerina mentioned, issued a white paper for that. And we did some work, legal analysis on the legal backgrounds for developing of the wind offshore power plants in the Black Sea at the offshore territories of Ukraine. So as the basis basically for the offshore wind, like international one, is actually indication in the EU strategy to harness the potential of offshore renewable energy for a climate neutral future. This is like the European Green Deal, saying that the Black Sea is a good natural potential for offshore wind and localized potential for wave energy. Moreover, as you may know, Ukraine is a participant to regional cooperation under the Common Maritime Agenda for the Black Sea. This is also was the basis for development of the offshore projects in the Black Sea on the territories of Ukraine, and also it was indicated that offshore wind projects for EU and energy community members in the Black Sea as the best bet to meet the objectives of the European Green Deal. So basically, not only there is an interest for the Black Sea from some kind of financial perspectives, but also some economic and political as well, as Black Sea is indicated in the European Green Deal. On the problems we face in Ukrainian legislation, I will not dig deep because I know that most of you are not lawyers. However, there is much work to do, from the legislation point of view, to implement offshore wind power plants in Ukraine. As previous presenters indicated, there is different kinds of offshore power plants, floating and also using the bed sea. However, like now there is no regulatory like basis, legal basis for interconnection of such wind power plants on this Black Sea. So like in the transmission system code and distribution system code of Ukraine, we now lack regulation on interconnection of offshore wind power plants to the grid, of the transmission system operator or distribution system operator. So there is no regulations at all. Also, there is the interconnection cable laying on the seabed regulation shall be adopted in accordance with the maritime laws and the best international practice. Therefore, there is space to do in order to implement that, and also the respective amendments to the legislation on the authorities of the operators shall be made. So there is no authorities of the transmission system operator and distribution system operator so far on the interconnection, and other authorities on offshore wind power plants. Moreover,
sorry for interrupting. Please click next slide, because we see only the title slide.
Ah, okay, sorry. Do you see it right now?
No. Just click the next slide.
I'm clicking actually. Let's do this way.
Yes. Oh,
okay, great. Let's do this way, because I don't know why that's not sharing. So
okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Katarina, for mentioning that. Yeah, so basically this is the slide which I was talking about on the problems on the transmission system code and distribution system code. Moreover, like the last point from that interconnection and regulatory issues, that the permits which are now required to be obtained from a number of authorities to make the development of the offshore wind power plant shall not be duplicated and shall not overlap with each other. So that means that, we believe that it would be good if Ukraine will develop something like one-stop shop, one-stop authority, in which the developer can go and obtain the permits to receive the green light to construct the wind power plant, offshore wind power plant. Also, besides the interconnection issues, we also had some research on environment impact assessment. The first issue, that territories eligible for offshore project are not determined in legislation. That's a big deal, and moreover, Ukrainian legislation lacks regulation on the interaction between the offshore wind power plants and passage of sea transport. Also, having the law of Ukraine on EIA, we believe that it shall define the main state authority in conducting such environmental impact assessment for offshore wind plant. And also this law and the law on strategic environmental assessment shall define the procedure for public to participate in discussion on environmental aspects of the implementation of the renewable energy projects on the sea. So this is also environmental issues are quite an issue for because the public hearings may take some time, and responsible authorities on environmental impact assessment can make the decision on construction of the wind power plant on sea quite for a long time, and there is now no such a procedure for offshore wind power project. On the land issue, so also there is a number of issues we discovered to be adopted. First of all, it is that the regulation of the land and water aerial collision in the law. So now we have that the use of water area should be considered from perspective of maritime movement of the vehicles as well. There is also no easement underwater, and no such regulation for that, and no such land designation. It is mean that the designated use of the land plot required for construction of the offshore wind power plant is not clear right now. As you know, also for now, in order to develop wind power projects in Ukraine, you need to receive the construction permit, and for developers, they know that it might be some lengthy and complicated procedure. However, now the construction permission procedure provides for the obligation for each of the object to fall within the town planning documentation, so that issue shall be also developed. On the change in legislation on the construction norms, actually there is an absence of the relevant state construction norms for the project design of the offshore wind power plants, and as well no specific permits for the conducting of the wind power plant construction under the water. So we suggest preparation of the separate special maritime special planning legislation based on the provision of the EU directive on MSP 2011, because now it has the regulations Ukrainian legislation lacks. So from my perspective, this is it. Like we would be glad to be a participant and to participate in drafting and providing legislation on the offshore wind power plant for Ukrainian state authorities. Of course, this is like there shall be initiative from Ukrainian state authorities, but as it is right now on the table, the offshore wind power plants, and as was mentioned, there is no wind power plants in Ukraine. So in order to have like first kick-off project, we definitely need to work on the legislation. So basically, this is it from my side. If you have any questions, you can write down on this chat part, or you can email me. Also, my presentation will be uploaded and shared with the participant of the webinars. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marta, for such a meaningful speech. Indeed, without legislation, no sector of the economy works, and the onshore wind sector has demonstrated how legislation can influence both positively and negatively on projects development. However, we don't have any questions in our chat, but I have one question to you. Ukraine already has a law on alternative energy sources.
Yes.
In your opinion, how realistic is today to amend this law and add a definition of offshore wind power to the text of the document? I think it would be a cool opportunity to recognize our maritime potential and to define the offshore wind power as one of the possible RES technology for Ukraine.
Absolutely. Thank you, Katarina, for your brilliant question. Actually, from my perspective as the lawyer, like it is definitely needed. There are definitely amendments to the alternative energy sources law is needed. However, like if we say about real implementation of the wind power plants in Ukraine, we would suggest to make a draft law on amendments to the number of laws on wind power projects on the sea. So that means that this draft law will amend not only the alternative energy sources law, but as well Land Code of Ukraine, also add some regulation on the environmental impact assessment, as well as number of provisions on the seabed and other land issues. So by that, we would understand that a number of issues are covered by that draft law, and it will allow the developer to not to only understand that there is opportunity to develop wind power projects in Ukraine. However, there will be understandable and clear roadmap for the developer to use in order to understand to what authorities to go, where they need to receive construction permit, what authorities are included if it is not one-stop shop, and other issues. So, like, of course, my recommendation would be like to have that draft law, complex draft law, which will allow to develop the wind power plants in Ukraine on offshore.
Thank you, Marta. We have one question in our chat from Maxim Sisoyev. Do you suggest in your white paper any support for offshore wind farms, auctions, feed, or no support? Unfortunately, in our white paper, we can do such calculations for what the best support scheme will be for offshore wind power. For perspective, I think the best support scheme will be contract for difference, but it's only my opinion. What do you think, Marta?
You know, this is a very tricky question. Thank you, Maxim, for your question. As you know, now there is a debate on the additional taxes on wind power plants and other renewable sources. So now, as Katerina also managed, that there is a crisis in place in Ukraine. Now, even like the agreements between the RES producers and the state authorities are not clear, and we do believe that in the near future it will not be resolved. From the perspective of the future, from the perspective of the person who definitely supports the renewable energy sources and definitely the offshore wind power plants development in Ukraine, I would rather, of course, propose to have a support scheme such as green tariff or something like this, feed-in tariff. However, I believe from now, I do not see how it would be possible to have that consensus in our society in order to allow offshore wind producers, wind energy producers to have that big green tariff. As Katerina mentioned, that could issue in the contract of difference or at least other options such as auctions or something like this. However, we still have no projects on the Black Sea in Ukraine, and still we do need to understand that we need to support that because of our a green future, and we need to substitute, as Katerina also mentioned, the thermal power with renewable energy sources, and also we had to the energy independence through using hydrogen as the additional fuel, and for that issue we'd also need to have that offshore wind power plants on our Black Sea, even for in order to produce green hydrogen. So this is my opinion on that issue.
Thank you, Marta. I'm fully agreed with you. Murat, I know that you have one question to us, so please.
Yes, hi, dear Marta. Thank you very much for your nice presentation.
Thank you very much.
As a legal expert in this field, I wanted to ask you that in some European countries like United Kingdom, Germany, and recently Poland too, they have a special law called offshore wind energy law. Do you think that in Ukraine and Turkey should separate offshore wind energy law for one-stop shop you just mentioned, or we can continue this without special law? Which is better, faster?
Of course, if it would be separate law, it would be definitely better for investor because there will be one basic regulation for the investors to have to read, to understand what are the rules for the developers on onshore wind power projects, and that will allow them to to have guarantees, because the law not only provides some procedures or some kind of permits receiving and other issues, but it also covers some kind of guarantees, and it will regulate as well other issues such as supporting schemes. It will allow other issues to be covered. So I believe that this is all I can only answer from legal perspective, because there is also a political one, and unless it will be supported by our political elites, we cannot provide clear understanding what is the vision of Ukraine on the offshore wind. But definitely we will support that idea on developing of that legislation, and once separate law definitely will be more beneficial that different indication on the offshore in different laws. Of course, we will not we would need that. We would need to adopt other legislative acts as I said, the land code of Ukraine or other environmental impact assessment. They definitely need separate regulation, but still, if there will be a separate law, it will be beneficial for the investors and for Ukraine as well, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. I think we can continue to reveal the potential for the development of offshore wind energy in Ukraine. Now, I want to give the floor to Maxim Hanja, Naftogaz Offshore Wind Farm Project Manager. Maxim, do you hear us?
Yes, I'm here. Do you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay.
A few words about Naftogaz. Naftogaz is a company in Ukraine that speaks openly about its intentions not only to develop offshore wind energy, but also to decarbonize its offshore gas platforms by wind energy. Maxim, please tell us what is the wind potential in Ukraine and what are the infrastructural opportunities for this technology?
Thank you, Catherine. Good day, the audience. I'm glad to see all colleagues. May I share my screen? Just a moment. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
You see presentation?
No. Yes.
No?
Now? No. Yes. Stop. Yes.
Just a moment. Yes. Okay. Some words about Gas Company. We are an affiliated company of the Naftogaz of Ukraine, and our mission is to increase RAS assets in the Naftogaz group. Now we have 2 onshore projects in development, and we are learning the offshore wind business case as a part of group's offshore development perspective. My presentation is about technical issues and specific of the Black Sea offshore wind construction. As mentioned, Ukraine has the highest offshore wind potential in the Black Sea basin. Ukrainian shelf is the biggest shallow area in the basin. Depth of the 12 miles zone makes around 15 to 20 meters, and the most part of the special economic zone will depth up to 50 meters. Although the northern west part of the Black Sea has the best in basin meteorological conditions for wind farms development. As you can see on the wind atlas map, average wind speed is 7.5 to 9 meters per second at the height of 100 to 150 meters. Moreover, during the last years, Romanian scientists from Galati University have been making the wind potential assessments using the mathematic-based methods of the whole basin, included Romanian sector in details. They received the results comparable with those from Baltic Sea wind farms. And I have a strong conviction that Ukrainian sector wind potential is not worse at the least. We have considered 2 sites for offshore wind pilots. We made preliminary modeling for these aquatories. Both are in the Ukrainian territorial sea with depth up to 20 meters. Near the existing ports, one of them possibly will play the role of construction port. And the significant factor, there are branched onshore electricity grid. And this modeling gives us a great results. Here you see characteristic of the sites which we use as a basis in modeling. Average wind speed, depth, distance to port, and cable length. The first site is on the east from Odessa near Charkiv, and the second site is on the west from Odessa near Chornomorsk. There are several seaports in Odessa and Mykolaiv regions which completely, without huge reconstruction, may be used as construction and operation basis for offshore wind projects. Therefore, Mykolaiv has a shipyard with good track record as a hull manufacturer. There will be an opportunity for local assembling of monopile or jacket foundations. Besides, Ukraine has a local manufacturers of modern anti-corrosion systems meet the requirements of international standards. Therefore, we have an opportunity to localize manufacturing of foundations at the least and to decrease project capex. The main role in the offshore construction plays the offshore fleet. Consists from specialized vessels, such as survey vessels, remotely operated underwater vehicles, construction tugs, cable and pipelines, heavy lift cranes. Lack of the offshore fleet is a challenge for Ukraine. We lost Chornомор's assets by the Crimea annexation, but we saved the key factor. We saved an engineering and human potential. Even now, we have approved engineering solutions and specialists in offshore constructing. We know how to build on the Northwest Shelf. The main challenge in the Black Sea offshore wind projects, as I see it, is the freight of the jack-up crane vessels. Their short-time freight is hampered by passing through the Bosphorus Channel by the limit height of Bosphorus bridges. Only one solution of this equation we have. We have to make, altogether with Romania and Bulgaria, a joint detailed long-term plan of the offshore wind construction in the basin. You see a light SWOT analysis of the windshore project development in Ukraine. I want to underline some significant issues. The main strength of Ukraine is an availability of engineering solutions and specialists in offshore constructing. The main weakness is lack of sustainable state risk policy. The main threat is Russian military activity in the region. And the main opportunity is collaboration of the offshore wind with other offshore energy projects, such as hydrocarbon production or hydrogen initiatives. And at the end, a few words about offshore hydrogen. We have a great opportunity to integrate offshore green electricity and offshore green hydrogen production at the northwest sector of the Black Sea with the EU Green Hydrogen Initiative and EU strategy for the Danube region. As Siemens Gamesa noticed, production of hydrogen without emitting of greenhouse gas will be feasible with fossil fuels energy by 2030. The offshore wind farms should become the main electricity source for power to gas and power to liquid transformations. And in long term, offshore wind and hydrogen projects would be the hubs in energy interconnection between Ukraine, Turkey, Bulgaria, and Romania. That's all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you much, Sim. Thank you for your great presentation and the revealness of all technical potentials. We have one question to you from our chat. Do you plan to use AC or DC connection of prospective offshore wind farms to Ukrainian mainland grid?
Look, well, it's a good question. We made only preliminary modeling. We do not know AC or DC connection to grid will be. It's all in the future.
For future development of what
yes.
we discussed. Yes. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Please stop share your screen because I see my face.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. In general, it's great news that we have great potential not only for the development of offshore wind farms, but also for national manufacture and grid connection. Unfortunately, besides the legislation matter, we need to resolve the problem of shipping, cables, infrastructure. But what is most important, we need to run a huge work with our society, because lots of people in Ukraine think that offshore wind is expensive. By the way, today the International Analytical Organization REN21 published its annual Renewable Global Status report, in which experts of REN21 prove that the global levelized cost of electricity for new offshore wind farms down by 54% for the last 10 years. So offshore wind power competes on equal with fossil fuels, and I think it's great. But one of the important questions is international cooperation of states of Black Sea region, and not only in terms of offshore wind power, but also in terms of green hydrogen production. And now we move to hydrogen technologies. Anastasia, Alexander, who will be the presenter?
So, hello everyone. I'm going to present instead of the Alexander Repkin. I'm presenting. Yes.
Okay, dear participants, we have some undergone changes. Unfortunately, Alexander Repkin was not able to take part in the webinar due to the meeting with Minister. He will be replaced today by Anastasia Kudrya, a representative of the Ukrainian Hydrogen Council, an association that has become one of the authors of our white paper. So, Anastasia, please tell us how real green hydrogen for Ukraine and how much European countries support us in the development of this market.
Okay, and also I want to ask you, can you please turn the presentation on, or who is moderating?
Yeah, I can help you. It's not a problem. Is it visible, your presentation?
Yes.
Great.
Thank you very much. So we will start our presentation of the offshore wind power and green hydrogen expansion boundaries for the Ukraine generation capacity. So it's going to be like more in the details, and we're gonna see in this presentation, and I will maybe answer all of the questions if you will have it. So the next slide, please. So here you can see the map of the European Energy Community members in the Black Sea of the offshore wind. Maybe the region the best to meet the objects of European Green Deal. As a recent World Bank analysis estimated the technical offshore wind power for the Ukraine waters of the Black and Azov seas in the total capacity of the 251 gigawatts. Also, they exclude of the territory of the occupied Crimea. So the next slide. With the Institute of the Renewable Energy and also the Hydrogen Ukrainian Council, we are like making the analysis to see the technical potential for the development of the offshore power generation in shallow areas and large water areas. The Azov and Black Sea and the Sivage Way, the revision of the Dnipro and the territorial shallow areas allow to the building of the offshore VPP, and the total capacity in Ukraine is going to be like approximately 146 in Ukraine. So you can see the capacity of the region of the Dnipro River and the Sea of Azov. It's like total surface area 8 square meter, average depth is 5 meter. Also, the Sea Azov is surface area of the Ukrainian part is 90 square meters, and average depth is 7 meters. The Sivage Bay and also Drill Bay. So the next slide. So as I said, the research of the Renewable Energy Institute of NASA of Ukraine, and Ukraine has a potential establishment offshore of all of the 250 gigawatts offshore in the territory with average annual electricity production of 984 billion kilowatts, and can provide an average annual production of around 290 million tons of the hydrogen of electrolysis. So the next slide is going to be, we can see as well as the analysis of the Institute of Renewable Energy with the hydrogen consul. We make it the most best regions for the distribution of green hydrogen, and where we can see the most blue, it's more like have a potential, the best potential for the green hydrogen. So you see there is Kherson, Zaporizhzhia, Dnipro, and also like Odessa region, which is close to the Black Sea, Azov Sea. Like the next slide, yes. So representatives for the Ukraine hydrogen production potential. In July 8, 220, adoption of the European hydrogen strategy, where Ukraine has a status as strategic partner in the implementation strategy of supply and cutting-edge energy source of the Ukrainian market. As a result, to join for the Energy Association, Ukrainian Hydrogen Council with the European Association Hydrogen Europe, Ukraine included the strategy document is 240 gigawatt green hydrogen for the European Green Deal in accordance with the 10 gigawatts of new facilities are going to be created in Ukraine. So Ukraine must be going to with this strategy, and the first of all is going to be like 10 gigawatts of the new facilities for the production of the sustainable energy carrier, most of the which is destined for the export to the European Union. So like Ukraine going to be the country transmit, and is a new and good opportunities for us. Ukraine has significant potential for the solar energy, whereas its areas Odessa, Kherson, Mykolaiv, and Zaporizhzhia regions. In terms of the present intensity of the sun, be compared with the central region of Italy. A capacity development of wind energy of Ukraine ranked second place after the United Kingdom, so the fall of Europe. And the next slide says perspectives for Ukraine. So as we can see, we are a lucky country now, and we are signing a lot of strategies with Europe, Germany, and going to the European Green Deal strategy. So as the potential, we can see the development gas transmission system for us, so we can transmit green hydrogen to the European countries. Also, the potential Dunai River hydrogen transmission to at least 5 countries. So we can as well like see the concentrations of the Dunai River. So it's going to be the best potential for us. At least it's going to be like new ways, new transmission roads, and 20 road connections. In the regard, there is active community on hydrogen transmission with the EU countries and the continuous Dunai region. Ukraine is a cooperation with the World Bank and launching the study of the possibilities of usage of the gas transmission system for hydrogen transaction and preparation for the pilot project for the production and transporting of hydrogen. So then another slide, you can see this Metro of European hydrogen backbone can be created by 2040. There is as well like the communication with the European countries and how green hydrogen can have a transmission around the through a lot of regions and countries. So, and Ukraine is going to be involved in this European like the new way how it's going to be. And also I want to say that the main thing is the European strategy for us and offshore wind energy, and it's really good for the production of green hydrogen, and we have the new opportunities in our country. And also it's going to be the new way to the independence from the auctions and the green tariffs for us. When we're going to be the more independent country, when we are going to make a lot of concentration for us for the green hydrogen production and transaction. Thank you.
Thank you, Anastasia. We have some questions. No, we have any questions. Thank you, Anastasia. I would like to remind to all our participants that we will be able to receive speakers' presentation, to send a speaker's presentation to all of you, and you can read all the slides in details. As a conclusion from Ukrainian part of today's webinar, offshore wind power and green hydrogen is a great solution for replacing fossil fuel power plants, for upgrade our grids, for develop the expectations of our society, for creation new highly qualified jobs, and of course for strengthening our international cooperation. Of course, we need to move forward and develop our infrastructural issues such as ports and shipping. Of course, we need to upgrade and develop our legislation background as support schemes, for example. But we believe in offshore wind power. We believe in our neighboring states. We believe in our power. And I'm convinced that offshore wind will be in Ukraine in nearest future because we see the goal and we don't see any barriers to it. So I want to thank one more time to team of Turkish Offshore Wind Energy Association, to Get Market, our information partner from Ukraine, and wish you a good day and sincerely congratulate with Global Wind Day. Thank you, Murat.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dear Katerina, actually, I have one more presentation left, and also around like 1:30, we are waiting big guy. He's from, World Bank, Mark Laborn. Because of time difference, that's the earliest he can connect, because even 1:30 here, that means 6:30 in Washington, D.C. So he will already wake up early. So I suggested I have one presentation left for Outlook, because normally it's on the program, but I didn't do it. I waited at the end of the seminar. If you agree, I should continue with that. And then I think that time, maybe Mr. Mark Laborn will connect. What do you think? I should continue with the presentation, or can you hear me?
Murat, I think you should continue with the presentation.
Okay. No. Now I should. You should. I try to share the screen, but a little bit slow. Can you see the?
Not yet.
Not yet. Why? Why it's not responding now? I think some technical issue. Just a second.
Yeah, Murat, we see your screen.
Now, can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, I would like to mention it, but still, mine is not working.
Murat, sorry, I can't hear you, but I see your presentation.
I hope you can hear me now. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry. Something happened. Yeah. Now I'm going to talk about current status and outlook of the offshore wind power. Normally, I planned this in the beginning, but because of this Mark Labor participation, I put it to the end. Now, dear old participants, I also prepared in English and Ukrainian language. One of my Ukrainian friend from Kiev University, he helped me. Next slide, please. Yeah, Turkish Offshore Wind Energy Association, we found we are just a very young association and dynamic association, and our main intention is to bring marine and energy sector all together. Because, these wind power plants, offshore wind power plants, not only the energy part, but also there's a huge inclusion of marine energy, marine part, shipbuilding in industry together. So that's why we set up this Turkish Offshore Wind Energy Association. Next, please. And those are some associations from Europe, United States. And you may see that such associations usually separate. especially when I check German Offshore Wind Energy Association and Polish Wind Energy Association, they specifically concentrate on the offshore wind energy, and they are doing good job, I think. In United Kingdom, there's also a very powerful offshore wind energy association. So they try to organize some events, and they try to make people know that wind and marine could go together. Next, please. You know, for the time being, when we talk about onshore wind turbine, it's, I can say, up to 5 megawatt capacity already commercially proven, technically proven. But when we look at the offshore part of the business, you may see that 14 megawatt installed capacity now on the market. This is GE, and also Siemens Gamesa has 12, 13, 14 megawatt installed capacity. So they are huge machines, 3 times bigger than the onshore ones. But their hub height, of course not 3 times bigger than the onshore wind turbines. When we compare this, they are usually like 140 meter hub height and around 160, 170 meter blade diameter, rotor diameter, I mean. Next, please. Yeah, this is picture I did when I was in 2 years ago in the Wind Europe Offshore Wind Fair and Conference in Copenhagen. But of course, that time it was planned that 25 megawatt offshore wind turbine, I should mention this. This wind turbine was planning to be on the wind market in end of 2020, but because of this COVID issue, pandemic issue, they postponed to 2021. So that means end of this year, this wind turbine will be on the market, hopefully. And it was still in research and development phase that time in 2019. But I think that from next year, probably, we may see on the market. So can you imagine one wind turbine and 25 megawatt unit capacity? So that means, I mean, if you put four wind turbines on the sea, so you will get 100 megawatt. It's like a thermal power plant, unbelievable capacity. So when this capacity will be on the market, so we will definitely talk about offshore wind market, only offshore wind market for Europe. Next slide, please. Yeah, and these are the world figure, end of 2020. You may see that, you know, in total world, 35,000 megawatt installed capacity. When you compare with onshore is around 800 gigawatts, so it's nothing. But anyway, there's a road, there's a long road for this offshore, and I will show you in the next slides. All the world countries, they have certain target for 2030, 2040, and 2050. So offshore will increase. And when we specifically look at the Europe, United Kingdom is number one, more than 10 gigawatt capacity, and Germany follows, and then Belgium, Netherlands, and Denmark comes, and other Europe, still Spain, Portugal, and France, they are not doing very good in offshore wind energy, but I am sure that on the near future, they will have some capacity, because these countries, they are waiting for floating wind turbines. In particular, this France, they are currently already developed on floating wind foundation for the Mediterranean part of the France, and they are going to use this. And probably this technology will come to Ukraine and Turkey too, because we need also this floating foundation solution. And also I should mention about China in the Asian market. China has already over than 10 gigawatts, you know, 10,000 megawatt, I mean. And South Korea also, they have they are preparing a lot of offshore projects on the pipeline. And plus I can mention about Vietnam. Currently they have 0 megawatt, but Vietnam also, there are a lot of projects on the pipeline, and till 2020, I mean, nearly 5 gigawatt capacity that they will install. Next, please. And of course, we should also check about investment part of the business. You know, currently, 1 megawatt offshore wind power plant costs around 3 million euro, including investment cost, I mean, financing costs too. But when you check this table from 2010 to 2020, yeah, especially in 2020, more than 24 billion euro financial closing happened in Europe. But it seems that, yeah, these are a little bit high, but still you should care about this. On onshore wind farms, capacity factor is around 30 or 35% capacity factor. And if you find this capacity factor, you may say, okay, it's good feasible project. But on the other end, if you check some wind power plants in the Baltic Sea and North Sea, where wind farms around, they accumulate there. So you may see that capacity factor is more than 55%. That means more or less really thermal power plant, like thermal power plant. But however, I also would like to mention that Mrs. Katerina and Mrs. Marta already put this, they also mentioned that these conventional power plants, I mean thermal power plants, or say fossil fuels and renewable power plants, offshore wind farm in particular, they should not fight each other. They are like sister and brother. Renewable power plants needs fossil power plants because renewable power plants, they are not base power plants, unfortunately still. So in one area, if you want to make some renewable power plants, you have to put there also some thermal power plants, I mean conventional power plants. I don't want to be misunderstood. I mean, I am not thermal power guy. I have been working in the wind power sector more than 24 years. So, but I see that for the grid stability, for the transmission system stability, renewable and conventional power plants should be together. This is important, and already Katerina and Mrs. Marta, they already mentioned about this. Thank you very much. Next, please. Yeah. Okay, and truly, when these offshore wind farms started to integrate the grid, it was like the first project was 1994 or 5. It was in Vindeby, Denmark, and more than 10 years onshore get speed, and nobody did any offshore wind farm in Europe. But after 2002, 2003, European countries, they started to plan offshore wind farms. And in Germany, where I worked 3 years, in Germany, they put 3 metmas to the North Sea. And then they collected meteorological and oceanographical data, and then they started offshore wind farms. So, but the first projects I remember when I was in Germany, it was like the prices was like between 15 to 20 euro cent per kilowatt hour offshore. But now, when I show you this 2090 tender results, as you may see here, the price even less than 5 euro. So that means actually also offshore wind farms, they became competitive in Europe. However, I should also mention this, these capacity, installed capacity, I mean, for each project, now they became like 500 to 1,200 megawatt capacity, because they started to build long distance from the seashore. I mean, even one project in United Kingdom, it's called Hornsea 1 and Hornsea 2. They are constructing, they start to build offshore wind turbines 200 kilometers from Britain coast. So that means 200 kilometer overhead line, energy transmission line they need. So for this scale of economies, they have to make like 1,200 or 1,000 or at least 500 megawatt offshore wind farm. So that's why last couple of years, the average capacity is around 700 or 800 megawatt per each project, as you may see here. So that means, I mean, if this technology come to Ukraine or Turkey, we will not grant them like 20 or 15 euro cent per kilowatt hour. As Andriy just said that in Ukraine, the tariff is around 8 euro cent per kilowatt hour. In Turkey, with the local content, the tariff is like around also 8. It's actually more than $9 US, but let's say 8 euro. So that means actually we already set up more than 12 gigawatt capacity. I mean 10,000 in operation and 2,000 under construction. So we already, as a Turkey, we already promoting more than 12 gigawatt, around 8 euro cent per kilowatt hour. So actually, if we give the tariff, like, of course, with the after the tender, I mean tender process, like 6 or 7, so that means even lower than the onshore wind farms. So these offshore wind farms looks quite feasible. Also, please take it to, please consider, please pay attention that these offshore wind farm working more than 55% capacity factor. That means like a thermal power plant. Yes. Next slide, please. Yeah. Now the world outlook till 2030. You may see this in Europe, more than 70 gigawatt. In United States, just the President Joe Biden explained, he stated a couple of weeks ago, 30 gigawatt till 2030. China already very, say, ambitious, 50 gigawatt. And according to Global Wind Energy Council total, it's more than 200 gigawatt. But I see these numbers are, I mean, not realistic. I am expecting even more, because as a more than 24 years wind guy, the market always did the better than the projections. They always did better than the such kind of report outlooks. So I am sure that the wind market, offshore wind market, will reach more than 250 gigawatt. I am sure on that, and I hope that in the 250 gigawatt, Turkey and Ukraine will be also some capacity. I mean, for this, we have to work hard. I mean, as a Turkish Offshore Wind Energy Association, and also Ukrainian Wind Energy Association should do something. And as we just talked with Andriy, thank God that with this event, with this first event, yeah, we just take some people's attention to the offshore wind farms. And next slide, please. And I think that's all. Thank you very much for your listening me. Now we can have some question and answers till the mark will come. Thank you very, very much. Okay. Can you hear me? Yes. Yes. Katerina, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Mr. Murat, we are hearing you, and Mark just participated. I think.
Yes. Yes. Now, yes, Mark can enter.
Good afternoon, Murat.
Good afternoon, Mark. How are you doing? Thank you very much for participating.
Very good, thank you. How are you? Good to join you.
Yeah, great that you are here, because your participation was very important. And also, again, I am grateful to you because it's 6:30 in Washington, D.C., so quite early. Now, I just would like to say you should make a brief introduction yourself, and then we will continue with your presentation, dear Mark.
Great, thanks, Murat, and good to be here, and good to join you today on Global Wind Day. it's going to be a busy day. There's lots of events going on, so but yeah, happy to get up to address you.
Thank you again.
So, great. So I'm Mark Blaborn. I co-lead the offshore wind development program at the World Bank. As Murat said, I'm based in Washington, DC. Been working in offshore wind for my entire career and joined the bank about 18 months or so ago. So I'm going to present a few slides, talk a little bit about the work in the program, and then focus on the work we're doing in Turkey. And hopefully you can see my slides.
Yes, Mark, we can see. Yes.
Perfect. Great. Okay. So the offshore wind development program, it's very much a joint World Bank and IFC initiative, with World Bank focusing on public sector investments and the IFC focusing on private sector investments. And it was established about 18 months, 2 years ago now, with the sole intention of taking offshore wind to emerging markets. So capitalizing on the success we've seen in Northern Europe and other markets, recognizing that the costs have come down significantly in the past 5 or so years, meaning that it's now affordable in the markets that the World Bank works in, and particularly targeting the energy transition, moving away from large-scale fossil fuel generation, particularly coal. It was started with some funding from the UK government, but we're funded by the SMAP program within the World Bank, which is a collection of donors donating into a World Bank trust fund that does lots of work across energy in general. And the program's got 3 main components. We have knowledge and best practice dissemination. So this is sort of global work that we're taking all of those lessons that we've seen, learned in existing markets, and stating how those can be then applied to these developing market contexts. And that includes some of the events that we run. First had quite a successful study tour to the UK in June 2019, and had representatives from the Turkish government join us on that, which is useful to show them around the UK and some of the successes that we've seen there. And unfortunately, that couldn't be physical last year, but we ran quite a successful virtual event, and had about 400 people attend from 24 different countries. And then we've got bank executed work. So this is the work that the bank will undertake, which tends to be at a higher strategic level, looking at the market and how that can evolve. And these are things like country roadmaps, which I'll go on to explain in a moment, are about Turkey, and general technical assistance to the government to help them with policies, particularly, and planning of regulations and things like that. And then the third main element is what we call recipient executed work. So this tends to be sort of more project specific work, where you're dealing with more risk, more information and data, and that tends to be executed by the recipient of the money that we can give as grants. So that tends to be the government, and tends to be particularly the Ministry of Energy. And this incorporates things like feasibility studies and site surveys, so gathering data on a site and designing the auction and then running the auction. So typically we would start with a roadmap which looks at what is the rationale for doing offshore wind in that market. What are the ways that offshore wind could develop as an industry? And then what are the benefits that could be brought to that country from the development of offshore wind? And these are things like not only clean power, but jobs and value added to the economy. It looks at the gaps that need to be filled to deliver offshore wind in that market. So that could be things like competition, could be things like specific regulations to allow seabed leasing, a whole series of gaps that could be filled, and gives recommendations to the government of if you want to develop the industry in this way, here are the things you need to do that. From that, we can help the government act on those recommendations and look at all those different elements that make up an offshore wind market, and support them with developing those areas. Then moving on to look at more specific projects, and then so this comes into recipient client executed work. So starting to sort of plan and understand the feasibility of specific projects prior to a competition. And ultimately, the bank and IFC and MEGA, we're here to support financing for projects. We want to see change and projects in the water. We're not just here to produce reports. So we've got our eye very much on when a project's coming along, how can the World Bank and IFC finance these projects, help to catalyze other financiers, bringing in private sector investment as well, and help to de-risk the industry so that we get successful projects. I won't dwell on this too much, but just to say we're focused pretty much on 10 key markets at the moment, one of which is also small island states. There's a number of those we're working with. Turkey is one of the earlier ones that we started working with back in sort of late 2020, but I suppose our initial interactions with the Turkish government go way back to the early 2019, and we've had physical workshops in Turkey as well. There's a whole range of different markets here, from the very large things like India and Vietnam, all the way down to the smallest, as I said, the small island states. And they've all got their own markets, peculiarities and requirements and drivers, and very different ways of working. So we did some mapping work in it was about a year ago, actually, in 2020, and looked at a number of the different emerging markets that we were interested in as a bank, and the areas that we saw that had the most potential for offshore wind. These maps are all very freely available online. If you haven't found them already, then please do go and search them out. We also looked at different regions, again, that we thought that were interesting to look at as clusters, and the Black Sea was one of them, because there are a number of countries around the Black Sea that have got some decent offshore wind resource, and that we think if we work together as a market here, then each country can benefit in turn from the creation of that market and supply chain activities that we'd see in the region. If we look at the topic of today's webinar and focusing on the two countries of interest, so we've got Turkey and the Ukraine, some pretty decent resource, both fixed and floating. Turkey's definitely got some deeper waters than the shallow water resource that it's got, with sort of more capacity potential for floating wind. And Ukraine, it's the other way around, sort of quite large areas that are fairly shallow and close to shore. And our definition here of fixed and floating is fixed tends to be in waters that are less than 50 meters, and floating wind is typically applicable to waters deeper than 50 meters, but probably not deeper than 1,000 meters. The other criteria for this assessment is wind speed, and we've suggested that winds that are greater than 7 meters a second, this is the annual average wind speed, are likely to produce economically viable projects. That's not to say that projects lower than 7 meters a second might not be possible in the future. For instance, that would unlock a number of different sites in Turkey where you've got lower wind speeds. We'll need to have a different approach to technology, because at the moment, the majority of offshore wind turbines are designed for North Sea conditions, where you've got wind speeds of 9-10 meters a second or much higher. So you end up with an energy yield if you deploy it in these lower wind speed areas that is too low, and you're not going to end up with a cost of energy that you can afford. So I think there needs to be a slightly different change in mindset for the technology we look at for some of these markets like Turkey and Ukraine. But that's not to say we can end up with some economically viable projects with good capacity factors at sites that are close to the shore, and avoiding taking up land. So skip that one. So we started an offshore wind roadmap back in November last year, and this was at the request of the Turkish government, after our discussions that we'd had in workshops and the study tours. This consortium that we appointed is led by COWI, as a large Danish multinational engineering consultancy, and that work is due to be completed later this year. Importantly, this work builds on work that was already done by COWI, by the Danish Energy Agency, but it also builds on the lessons learned and the knowledge that's been built up by the ministry to understand offshore wind and how to plan it. And as I mentioned before, the scope of the roadmap looks at all of the different elements that make up an offshore wind market, and that's everything from the planning of where these projects can go in the sea to looking at the supply chain and economics, to the regulations surrounding safety, but then starting to look at what comes next. So things like follow-on studies and technical assistance. And so that then brings out a whole series of recommendations that can be followed up as next steps. And so what we're trying to do through this roadmap is to give the Turkish government evidence that they can use to make future decisions around which direction the industry wants to go, and how they're going to get there. As I said, it provides recommendations on the things that need to be doing to allow them to get to where they want to go. And that's looking at how much capacity do they want to deliver from offshore wind over what period of time. Clearly that has big implications on things like cost of energy, and the economic benefits. The first roadmap that we actually produced from this program was for Vietnam, and we actually launched that publicly last week. Again, if you've not had a chance to look at that, I encourage you to do so. It's a similar sort of format to the one we're following here. It's got a lot of similar studies and considerations in there. I can share the link for that if you haven't seen it. But that makes a very strong case for the rate of deployment and economic benefit and cost of energy reduction. And there's some very, very strong reasons why you might want to develop with a decent rate that's manageable, but giving plenty of visibility into the future and certainty for the private sector to be able to invest and establish this industry. My final slide here is to mention the recipient executed work that we are planning. So this is the third pillar of work that I mentioned in my first slide. So the government of Turkey is effectively going to be awarded additional funding from the European Union under the IPA 2 program. So this is a continuation of the IPA work that the EU has been funding for energy, and this money effectively is administered by the World Bank Group. So it's money that's provided then to the Turkish government, but the Turkish government very much is responsible for deploying that money and using it and managing it, but with support from the World Bank Group and its teams of staff. We expect this to start later this year, run in parallel to the roadmap. And the focus really of this work and this money is to start looking at the sites that the Turkish government has selected for a future offshore wind auction, and start building more of a database for those sites, particularly looking at things like wind conditions and ground conditions. So actually undertaking physical surveys, and then building that compendium of data that can be used to inform an auction and the bidders that would come forward for a future tender. So that's very early days for that still. It's but as I said, we hope to get that underway a bit later this year. So that's what I had to say to you today. I hope that's interesting. There'll be far more information coming out over the coming months, and we'll be running things like consultations as well with the industry to sort of get their feedback on the roadmap and the outputs that we've got. So I hope you'll be able to have some good discussions with our consultants then, and give some feedback. Look forward to speaking to you again soon. So, Murat, back to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mark. Really, it's great honor and great pleasure having you here. Thank you very much in a very early time of Washington DC. Now, you heard our last speaker, so I think if there is no question, we are going to close the event, online event, because more than 2.5 hours. So I would like to say all participants, thank you very much for your attending our joint webinar with Ukrainian Wind Energy Association. And again, I congratulate you for your Global Wind Day. And I hope what Mark already mentioned, that probably it will be a roadmap for Ukraine too. So Turkey is a little bit advanced than Ukraine, the offshore wind power projects, but it will come soon to Black Sea area region. Thank you very much again. See you soon. Спасибо большое. Дякую.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.